pluralism for me is the lodestar, both for me personally and as an Indian, because to me it's the most valuable thing of the Indian civilization heritage, is this pluralism. We really have the most astonishing diversity, as you all know, every kind of diversity, geographical, topological, meteorological, from the snowy wastes of the Himalayas to the deserts of Rajasthan, to the tropical jungles of the south, the 23 distinct languages of the 22,000 dialects that are spoken by Indians, and some of these dialects, by the way, are spoken by more people than speak Danish or Norwegian. The fact that we have every ethnic group known to humanity that has at some point in the last 4,000 years crossed on the Indian peninsula and left some of its seed behind. The fact that we have every religion known to mankind, with the possible exception of Shintoism. Even Shintoism seems to have some Hindu elements. All of this means that India has this extraordinary rich diversity. And I think one of the great accomplishments of Indian independence and the last 60 years of Indian experience has been the way in which democracy has played its part in preserving this diversity. I love telling the story now. People in Australia noticed that last week the Indian government just survived the vote of no confidence or a vote of confidence. But in fact, what was more interesting about this government was the moment it was formed 4.5 years ago, when it won the elections in May 2004. What did we see? We saw a woman political leader of Roman Catholic faith and Italian descent, who won the election and then made way for a Sikh to be sworn in as Prime Minister by a Muslim president in a country 81% Hindu. And to me, that was India in a nutshell.
I'm going to not trump you exactly with your own story, but in an interview, you love telling the story of the 1971 war with Pakistan.
There you are.
The war that created Bangladesh. This is another wonderful story. The head of the Indian Air Force in the northern sector was a Muslim. The overall commander-in-chief of the armed forces was a Parsi. The general in the eastern command who led the troops that marched into East Pakistan was a Sikh. And the major general who was helicoptered in at the end of the conflict to negotiate the terms of surrender was Jewish. It's sort of amazing sort of conglomerate, isn't it?
It is, and that's what is the experience of growing up in India. And it's to me what is most precious about our heritage, and what distinguishes us, frankly, from other countries in the neighborhood, including, of course, the country that was hacked off from India at partition on the somewhat bigoted principle that people of a particular faith had to have a separate country of their own. The magic of India is the argument that this is the land for everybody. Everybody who has ever contributed in any way to its civilization history has not only a place in it, but can be anything, can be anyone, can have a stake and play his or her role in it. Now, having said that, I now want to get to the second part of your question, because as somebody who believes this passionately, and for it matters passionately, I still have to say, in all honesty, that this is something that still needs to be fought for. Because in a tempestuous democracy, there are always people who don't value pluralism, and who would rather see a reduction of the Indian identity to something that they would consider pure.
Well, clearer too. Is it hard to play these multiple roles? That's what I was seeking on the personal.
No, I think it comes far too naturally for it to be called hard. I mean, people are astonished, for example, when they think that in Benares, the holiest city of the Hindus, the annual Ram Leela, which is a big festival to the god Ram, a sort of a particularly venerated figure in the north of India. In Benares, the people who make the masks for the Ram Leela, the masks of all the Hindu gods, all the characters, are invariably Muslim. And this has simply been the case for literally 1,000 years. We have, of course, case after case after case of this sort of transformation. And so I think it's part of the lived reality of India. Now, there are people who want to dissent from it. There are people who want to focus on separate religious identities. There are those who, in particular, have been arguing the case for a sort of Hindu zealotry, a sort of Hindu chauvinism, suggesting that if the Muslims can fight for and win their own country, then West Bengal remained should be a country of Hindus. But of course, that was never the logic of the nationalist movement. Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, the great figures of Indian nationalism, consistently rejected the logic of the argument that had created Pakistan. If you actually accepted that once Pakistan had been created, that what remained was a country of Hindus, you were buying into the very logic you had resisted throughout. And they never did. So they said no. this remains a country for everybody. And that's why there are more Muslims in India today than there are in Pakistan.
But there's not a lot of intermarriage, is there, between
No.
the various groups? That's an interesting thing.
There isn't.
Try to understand that.
Well, you know, I often tell Americans in particular that the main difference between them and India is that we are not a melting pot. They may be. What we are, for those of you who've been to Indian restaurants, is a thali. Thali is a thick stainless steel plate. The number of different bowls on it. Each contains a different dish. Because they're in different bowls, they don't necessarily flow into each other. But they belong together on the same plate. And they combine on your palate to give you a satisfying taste. That is Indian.